Welcome back to Out of Your Mind podcast. I wanted to talk a bit about personal branding versus a more luxury faceless brand where you're not the face of your company. So when it comes to your jewelry brand or any creative brand that you've got, you basically have two choices. So you can build a personal brand, which is more like an artist where people follow you, or you can create a faceless, higher end luxury brand where it's less about you and more about the product and the aesthetic of the brand. So there are two sides to this. If you're going for a personal brand, you're more likely to grow faster on social media. You're seen as a real human behind the work, and people really connect to that. They follow you, they support you, they're rooting for you, and it builds trust faster. So you're more memorable to your audience. Now, if you're going for a luxury, let's call it faceless brand, you can often charge more and you can scale bigger in the long run, but things like multiple stores and wholesale, maybe even selling the business one day, but it does take longer to grow. So it's a bit of a colder approach, and it takes more trust and more time and more money to build because you're not showing who you are. You're not really giving anyone a reason to trust you. So if you're in the early stages of your jewelry making journey, or you're starting to step out of the hobby zone, it's really worth asking yourself, is this a personal brand? Or am I sort of building a faceless brand that looks more like a high-end kind of polished business? Your approach is going to be completely different. So if you're leaning into a personal brand, you're going to probably have your face as the profile photo. You'll show more behind the scenes, like gritty stuff. You'll talk to your audience a bit more. You'll share your voice. You'll have different thoughts and opinions on things. It just becomes more about you and less about the product. So people are actually starting to buy from you as a creative artist. So if you go for a faceless approach, your brand might look more like a bit more luxurious, a bit more curated, but you'll need to sort of work a lot harder and spend more money to build trust. So you'll need things like branding agencies and paid ads and like super solid product photography to make it really work. And the thing is, people nowadays are buying from people. So we like to know, like, and trust the person before we're buying from them. So if you're showing up online and you're talking about your day and showing your workspace and your process, people are going to feel like they know you. So that creates connection, and connection drives sales. So if you're just posting a logo and photos of your work without any human element, it's way harder to build that trust quickly. It's not impossible, but it's slower and it is more expensive to grow, but it is not impossible. So what's worked well for me is going the personal brand route. So I used to post jewelry and tutorials just to my feed. There was no real info about me as a person, and lately I've really started to share a bit more about my life, about my thoughts and my style, and it's really helped connect with people in my audience on a deeper level. Now, that doesn't mean that you need to show your kids, you don't need to show your pets, you don't need to talk about your love life. It's personal branding doesn't mean sharing everything, okay? It just means showing who you are in the way that feels right for you. So let's say Gary V, for example, massive personal brand. He barely talks about his family. He doesn't overshare. In fact, he makes a point of not talking about his family. But what he does do well is he shows up with his voice, with his humor, his perspectives, his values, gratitude, hustle, like honesty, all of that. That's his angle. And you can do that too, just in your own way. So having a personal brand makes your business more relatable. You're not just a shop. You're a person, you're a creative, you're an artist, and people love to support people. Now, to be fair, you can scale a personal brand as well, but it's just a different path. So, for example, if I had Cassandra's Jewellery and I opened stores in Australia, Europe, and the US, I could do that. But it would be harder to sell the business one day because people associate the brand with me. And if I suddenly hand it over to Susan, people would be like, who the fuck is Susan? So that's the trade-off, okay? So to sum it up, the personal brand will grow faster. You'll have more connection, more fun, harder to sell, harder to detach from. Now let's compare that to a faceless brand. It's more elite, so it's scalable, it is slower, and it is going to take more time to build and more time for people to trust you. more effort basically. So just to back this up, I remember hearing about a study that I saw this study from Rory Vaden, I think it was, that said if you were to start 2 social media accounts and post the exact same content, the personal account would grow 3 times faster than the faceless one. So the growth rate is insane. And that's my take. So I'm always going to back the personal brand route because it just feels more human and it works. But both are valid. It just depends on what you want, what your goals are, how you prefer to run a business. Because some people might think, absolutely fucking not, I'm not putting my face to this. What if it, doesn't work? Then my face is everywhere. And like, people have that real fear, and that's fine. That is so fine. You can continue to run a faceless account, faceless brand, and it can succeed. But I'm just saying, if you are going for a personal approach, it's going to be a lot easier to grow and scale your business. So that's something to think about. That's all from me today. Just a little quickie. I hope it got you thinking about what kind of brand you want to build. If you want to build a brand, it's more than okay to just make jewelry as a fun hobby. As always, thank you so much for hanging out, and I will see you next week.